Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode on the Crappie channel. I'm Davis, and today I'm going to walk you through how to set up a fish finder when you just buy one, right out of the box. I had a bunch of people comment on the last sonar video I did, I believe it was the chart speed one, saying they just bought sonar units. I've done a few videos kind of piecing this together, but I thought, you know what, let's walk through the entire process of how to set one up, how to use your GPS, your 2D sonar, your down imaging and your side imaging, and then hopefully I'm going to get on some fish, or at least some sort of cover. I'm going to mark my GPS and show you how to get back to that GPS point, where you are on the map, and just kind of dive into some details to hopefully help you put more fish in the boat. But first, I have to thank A Leader for sending some waterproof shoes. And I wasn't going to do the video like this, but the boat launch I'm on right now, this is the St. Croix River, and a lot of times on river systems they get flooded, like it is right now. I mean, it's probably up at least, I don't know, 8 feet or so, and the boat launches are pretty shallow, so I do have to get in the water, and that's where these waterproof shoes come in, real handy. The problem is, I talked to this company back in August, and I thought they were going to send them in the beginning of September, which would have been fine. Water temps were 70 degrees, no problem. We're in late October right now. I just got these a couple weeks ago, actually a week and a half ago in the mail, and yeah, it's been about 35 degrees for about a week straight. Water temps are flirting with 40, are flirting with the actual 40-degree mark. I guess we had a little bit of a warm-up today and yesterday. I'm gonna guess the water temps are like maybe 42 if I'm lucky. But I'm a man of my word. I say I'm gonna do a video for you, I will do a video. So I'm gonna throw these on. I gotta launch a boat anyway. I gotta get wet. Gotta launch this boat. Throw these on. My cojones are gonna freeze their cojones off. And we're gonna get into setting up a fish finder. Stick with us. Well, there you go. Oh my goodness, that's cold. That is ice cold water. It honestly felt like I was stepping into an ice bath. I'm gonna guess the temps are barely in the 40s if I'm lucky. But one thing about these shoes, and especially on this river launch, there's a lot of broken glass for whatever reason that kind of floats in here. And a lot of times I was launching barefoot, which really wasn't safe. So I definitely think these harder soles are going to protect my feet. I encourage you to do it with warmer water though. Ideally you'd use waders obviously for something like this, but I said I'd make a video on them, so I did. Also, you can check out their link, and I don't get any commission from it or anything. They just were kind enough to offer 15% off if you use code DAVIS15 if you want waterproof shoes for launching boats or whatever. Walking around in areas that are highly polluted with glass and other sharp objects, which unfortunately this river kind of is, unfortunately. But all right, let's jump into the sonar. We're gonna get out there, mark some fish hopefully, and I'm gonna show you how to set up a sonar unit. Also, I'm gonna warm up because I can't feel my feet right now. Well, there's a fish on the bottom. So let's just jump right into setting up sonar. The first one a lot of you are going to use is this 2D sonar setup. And the first thing I think I would do here is make sure on your sonar 2D display frequency 200 kilohertz. So this 200 kilohertz is going to give you a narrow cone over this 83 kilohertz, which is what a lot of you, it'll probably default to 83 kilohertz. You can also run the 83 200 kilohertz. I just run a 200 kilohertz frequency on my 2D sonar. And what this is going to do is give you a better picture in terms of it's going to grant more pixels to a smaller amount of area in the water. So if you had it on 83 kilohertz, it's a wider cone angle like this. What happens is when you have it on that larger frequency, it forces this screen to give less pixels to a square, let's say a square inch of water. But if you have it on 200 kilohertz, it will give you more pixels in that same square inch of water, giving you a better image to show up on your 2D sonar. So if you have a fish that's 6 inches long, some sort of like a smaller bait fish, crappie, bluegill, something like that, if you have 83 kilohertz, it might only give 10 pixels to that 6-inch fish, something like that right there. But if you have a 200 kilohertz frequency running, a narrower cone, it can give that same 6-inch fish 10 pixels, 20 pixels. It'll show up better on your screen. So that's the first thing I suggest. Second thing I suggest doing is adjusting your sensitivity. Now, in the fall, which is what I am right now, you can see pretty much all the leaves are gone off the trees. And what happens is a lot of times they'll drop in the water, and you'll pick them up on the sonar. When that happens, I usually turn my sensitivity down. But for some of you that haven't got to the point of the leaves are dropping, they're in the water, start with your sensitivity right at halfway. So for me, it's 10, okay? And start adjusting. Now there's a fish on the bottom right there. It's probably might be a walleye, something. And then slowly start turning up your sensitivity until you get to the point. See, now stuff is coming in here. This is probably a leaf. There's some leaves in the water. I doubt they're fish. This is just getting cranked up way too much. I usually run my sensitivity about 12. I find that I can spot some smaller bait fish, like crappie, a lot better when I turn my sensitivity up. If you're fishing for bigger fish, bass, walleye, muskie, stuff like that, you can turn your sensitivity down a little bit. They'll still show up on your screen. But start at 10, work your way up until you can finally get that picture of it's going to be somewhat clear. You might be picking up some smaller bait fish like that. I'm comfortable with that type of sensitivity. Whoops. The next thing you're going to do is always adjust your lower range. Never have it on auto. And the reason you never have it on auto, like it is right here, is because when you're fishing in deeper water, let's say I go out and I'm fishing in 40 feet of water, this picture, what it's going to do is actually show me the 40 foot of water bottom, but it's going to grant a smaller area, just like having a wider cone angle is forcing all the pixels into a smaller area. It's going to give a smaller area, or it's going to give less pixels to a smaller area of water, okay? And it's not going to show up, some images won't show up. So if you're fishing for crappie in 40 feet of water, but you have it on auto, like this is, see how it's adjusting up and down? Your image is, one, it's going to jump like that. Two, you're not going to see the pixels that you should be seeing if you have it set on a specific depth. Now I have it set at 30 feet pretty much at all times. Sometimes I'll adjust it up to 25. If I already know, I'm fishing in less than 20 feet of water, then I'll adjust it up even further. But the reason I set it to 30 feet, my max depth, there's actually two. One, it gives my image a better clarity on screen, so I can see smaller fish like this one coming into screen right now. And the second reason is a lot of these fish, if you catch them deeper than 30 feet of water, there's a higher mortality rate, okay? There's a higher probability they're going to die, so I don't normally target fish deeper than 30 feet of water unless I plan on keeping them. The next thing I look at for 2D sonar is your chart speed. Now, I had a debate with somebody in the comments section that chart speed and boat speed, on the Humminbird website they say to match it or to round up. Okay, so if I'm usually, my trolling speed's like 2.5, sometimes 3 miles an hour. So I usually have my chart speed set at 4 or 5. Okay, and I just did a video on this last week that I posted, adjusting my chart speed up and down on on down imaging and side imaging sonar to see if I could get a much faster picture to show up on the scroll speed. But on the Humminbird website, they say to match your trolling speed, which I'm not going anywhere, I'm just kind of drifting right now, but normally I troll about 2.5 to 3 miles an hour, so I set my chart speed to 4 or 5, okay? match it or round up by 1.5 miles an hour. And the reason for this, the reason they give for this is if you have your chart speed too low, the images will show up either as like a straight line, or they'll show up really elongated if you have your chart speed too slow or too fast, especially on your 2D sonar. But the person in the comments section mentioned that your chart speed is actually a kilohertz. It's measured because your sonar is measured in kilohertz, and you're trying to match it to your trolling speed, which is measured in miles per hour. It's not really a comparable metric. I think that was just Hummingbird's way. I think that was just Humminbird's way of just trying to give people some advice on how to get a better picture. I don't think there's actual scientific evidence of, matching the mathematics of your chart speed, which is your kilohertz showing up on your sonar, versus how fast you're going miles per hour. So best bet is just try to match it, round up by 1 mile an hour and 1 or 2 miles an hour, and you should get a fairly clear image. The last one is you can adjust your sonar colors to whatever you want. If you want a black background, white background, grayscale, bunch of different weird stuff, crazy options here. I prefer the multicolored. Red is my darkest color, blue is my lightest color. You'll see it on the palette scale here. This will be your more solid images, so when your transducer sends a signal down, a solid image will read dark red. Less solid images, meaning smaller fish, smaller bait fish, or leaves in the water, will read blue of some kind. Actually, this isn't quite what I had, is it? What did I have? There we go, I had this. I had some darker blue purple action. So when you're reading this, like stuff on the bottom here, they're either leaves or there's maybe some smaller bait fish, some perch or something on the bottom right now. So that pretty much wraps up what I think I wanted to. Oh, quick thing. I did a video on this. Do not turn your fish ID. Well, is it your sonar? I think it's in your sonar options. Turn this off. Your fish ID. Do not turn that on. What it does is it forces your unit to assume certain things. It takes a lot of assumptions. So I noticed when I did the video on somebody asked the question of whether to turn this fish ID on or off. What happened was a lot of times I would see fish and I just see them as arches on the screen, something like that, a lot bigger obviously. But a lot of times I'd see schools of crappie, and the only time it actually showed up that there were fish there was when there was a very large school of crappie would show up and they were really packed together, and it would actually show a picture of a walleye, and that was pretty much it. So it's not very accurate. Leave that off. Next one is your down imaging. And if you notice on 2D imaging, there's a thing on the right here. This is called the scope, okay? I gotta clean my screen off here. This is called the scope. This is, somebody went and debated me on this, but this is real time. This scope is real time. So as soon as as soon as the transducer sends that signal down and something pings off it, you will see it show up here. And then it'll show up on your historical data going from right to left. With your down imaging and your side imaging, you're not going to see that, okay? You're not going to have some sort of scope. But this, if you've seen the video I just posted on chart speed, it's very, very close to real time. It might be 2 feet behind you, it might be 3 feet behind you after you go over it, and then it'll show up on the screen. So just be aware of that. But this, again, has a bunch of different color options you can choose from. I just leave it at this. I'm comfortable with this. But the one thing about down imaging, I'm going to go to down imaging sensitivity. You again start it in the middle and either move it up or move it down to clear up your picture. I usually bump up my down imaging and my side imaging as well as my 2D sonar 1 or 2 ticks above my midpoint. Now down imaging, understand, so let's say this is your 2D sonar angle. Down imaging is a little wider. Okay, so you are actually seeing a little bit left and right of your boat. So you'll sometimes see fish like right here. There's a little white spot. It could be a small branch or something, a small log. That is actually outside of where your 2D imaging sonar cone would be, okay? So it is showing left and right of your boat. All right, the one thing I did want to mention that's pretty cool about down imaging, if you just have a down imaging unit, if you go into menu, hit it twice on the Humminbird setup. You hit your menu button twice. It might be a little different if you got a Lowrance or a Garmin, but you go down on your sonar screen to where it says zoom width, okay? And this is going to adjust your down imaging cone angle. So the cool thing about down imaging, specifically with the Humminbird that I'm familiar with, is if a down imaging, right now I have it on wide, so let's say it's like this, right? The wide angle is showing further left and right of my boat than right here's my medium angle, so something like this, and my narrow angle. Now my narrow angle is still a wider beam, a cone angle than my 2D, than my regular two-dimensional sonar. It still shows up more data in this down imaging unit than my 2D sonar would, because I still see left and right of my boat. My 2D sonar, I really don't do that. It doesn't show up left and right of my boat. But if you want a sharper image, let's say you're fishing in fairly deep water and you want to see directly below your boat but a little bit left and right, you can adjust it to narrow, okay? So again, when you have a smaller cone angle, your unit's going to be able to give more pixels to a smaller square area of water, okay? If I'm usually fishing in like 20 feet of water, so I leave it on wide. It really shows up fish. So see right here, there's either fish to the left or to the right of my boat right now. They're definitely small. I have my sensitivity up. Your down imaging, if you go to your down imaging enhanced here, I know I'm kind of giving a quick rundown, but my sensitivity is turned up, my contrast is turned up. I leave my sharpness off. If you want to turn this on, I would turn your contrast down a little bit and your sensitivity down a little bit. I find it gets a little fuzzy. See, if we turn it off, see how it's pretty much a black background. I start to turn it on, I get a little more distortion, a little more interference. If I turn it all the way up, and then it's pretty much, you know, it's a bunch of yellow dots. So I usually leave that off and just turn my contrast up a couple points, or a couple ticks above midpoint. My midpoint would be 10. Turn that up a little bit. It gives me a little bit more of a grainier image. On the bottom, I can differentiate between a rock and a fish than just the bottom. Again, the lower range, I set it for 30 feet. I do the same thing for my 2D sonar. And my chart speed, I got it set at 5 again. It's just 2 ticks above my normal trolling speed. I'm trying to think if I need to cover anything else real quick on setting up your down imaging. This is kind of a crash course of doing this, okay? Oh, one thing I do want to note back in the down imaging, because I think people are going to have a question about this. You notice I have this switch fire mode set at clear mode. If I turn it to max mode, I'm going to get, it's going to send a stronger, I don't know if it sends a stronger signal, but it picks up a lot more data, okay? And it seems kind of cluttered. But if you're picking up small little like blips when you're in clear mode, switch it to max mode, and you'll be able to see a lot better, you know, a picture of what actually is down there. Now, I don't know if these are actually fish, if these are leaves in the water, because they're not solid red like I'd expect them to be with my sensitivity turned up. I don't think they're actually fish. So I usually leave that off, except when I really need to confirm if that, like right here, is that a fish? I don't know. I'll switch it to max mode. That actually might be a fish. It seems like there's a lot of solid red in this picture right here. And now we got our side imaging. Okay, so the one thing about side imaging, you can't set your lower limit, obviously, because it looks left and right and not down. Well, not straight down anyway. So right now I have it set 100 feet left and right. I usually max out at 105 feet left and right. Any further than 105 feet left and right, which is what I max mine out as, I feel like the image gets too crunched down, and it's really hard to pick up what is a brush pile, what is a fish. It's hard to differentiate between what's structure and what's cover and what are fish. So if I'm cruising around, I'm usually between 105 feet and 90 feet. But if I know where I'm at, okay, let's say I'm around pillars, some dock pilings, I know where I'm at, I know what I'm doing, I'll turn this all the way down to 80 feet. Have you seen some of Matt from 3 Pound Crappie Fishing's videos, 3 Pound Fishing? he has the mega imaging, and he likes to run it at 80 feet. He finds that very comfortable. This is something that you're going to have to just kind of get used to. Some people, when I know where I'm at, I'm going to run it at 60 feet. I want to give a very crisp, clear image of what is showing up. I want to differentiate between brush piles and fish, and it's going to give me a very clear image running 60 feet or less. The first thing you can do on side imaging, before I kind of jumped into the range, you can set it to either both sides of the boat or just one side of the boat, which is pretty cool. Okay, so if you just want to see one side of the boat, let's say you're trolling a shoreline like this, and this is the left side of my boat, and I just want to see what is from my boat to that shoreline, I can set it to the left side of my boat and only see the left side. I usually set it on both because a lot of times I use this purely for discovery. I want to see if there's schools of crappie out here. I've done videos on that, what they look like on side imaging. So the next thing, I got it on 10 right now. I think I was at a lake right where I had a bunch of leaves in the water, and I turned the sensitivity down. I usually have it set at about 12, 11 or 12. I bumped that up as well. I'm probably actually going to leave it at 12 there. And the reason is I'm a crappie fisherman, okay? When you're fishing for panfish, when you turn your sensitivity up, they stick out a little better. If you're fishing for larger game fish, bass, walleye, you can turn your sensitivity down because they'll still show up, okay? Now if you go to your SI Enhance, this will show up your sensitivity. Again, I got my contrast turned up. I have my sharpness off, just like I had my sharpness off on my down imaging. But if you go to contour mode, now I leave it off because what contour mode does, when you turn it on, all this black area, which is right below your boat, or for the most part right below your boat, it's a little bit left and right, will go to just this gold colored area, okay? And I personally find it hard to see fish when that contour mode is on. I mean, I understand that it might show the lake bottom or river bottom, the actual contours, which is probably why it's called contour mode. It'll show the drops if you're fishing drop-offs or something like that, probably better than when you have it turned off. But a lot of times I find crappie suspended up off the bottom, and I'll see them really well in this black area to the left and right of my boat. Chart speed again, I always round up by 1 or 2 based on how fast I'm trolling. Whoops, that was a GPS marking, I didn't need to do that. And then you can obviously change your color palette. The one thing I didn't mention on down imaging that also applies to side imaging is your image frequency. There are 3 of them, 3 main ones for older units. Some of the newer units have like a hybrid frequency range, but the 3 older ones are 455 kilohertz and 800 kilohertz, and then if you have a mega imaging, I think it's like a 1.1 or 1.2 kilohertz, 1.2 megahertz. I recommend running it on 455 to start. Okay, so just a quick rundown. I've done a bunch of videos on this, but 455, if this is my boat, 455 will show a pretty much straight out in the water column, or straight out from the side of my boat, cone angle, right? So I might be able to pick up, I don't know if you can see this, it's pretty dark actually. Hold on, let's lighten that up. So there is a leaf right there, and a lot of times if I throw a buoy out to the side, there we go. If I throw a buoy out to the side, the leaf is probably somewhere in that area, I can actually see either the buoy or the string going down. If I have 800 kilohertz running, like right here, this is a narrower cone angle, so instead of seeing straight out to the side of my boat, it's actually a closer down angle, but it's still wider than your down imaging if you had your down imaging cone angle set to wide. It's still wider, you're still seeing more water column. This is actually going to give a clearer picture right below your boat, but you're not covering as much water. I like to cover some water when I'm running side imaging, so I tend to always run it on 455. I highly recommend you just start there, and once you start seeing fish, and I'll link a bunch of videos of what fish look like on down imaging sonar, side imaging sonar, what they look like on 2D imaging sonar, what they look like on 2D sonar. I'm going to link all those below. You can check those out to go further in depth. I just wanted to go through how to set some of this stuff up, kind of like a crash course, okay? Into GPS real quick. So I'm on the St. Croix River right now. I accidentally just marked that GPS, but all you're gonna do is, let's say I want to fish this contour right here, this contour point. Let's see where we go. There we go. I want to fish this contour point, okay? All I need to do is go over here. Sorry, I'm losing light real quick, and hit mark. Hit mark. Now this shouldn't show up. I just have an older unit and I kind of bumped it. But anyway, this is going to give you a waypoint, right? And you can actually adjust that waypoint by clicking. If you go to the main waypoint, if you hit menu, you can actually adjust it by either naming it. You can edit. If you click edit, you can actually name it something, and then you can change what it looks like. So you can change the icon. If I want to say fish, so it's going to say fish, and then I'm going to go down and say save, and then I'm just going to hit exit, and now it's going to show up as a fish right there. Okay. All right. Oh, another little tip here: if you hit the power button one time, and you want to, like, it's getting dark right now, so normally I had it at 10, which is kind of really bright, but if you start running at night, you just turn down the light a little bit to whatever you want. If it's dark out, I usually turn it down to dim. It's easier to run at night. Just a little tip. All right, so let's say I want to go to my waypoint that I marked to go fish. One, I could just eyeball it up, or you can actually go to the waypoint with your cursor. I'm just using my cursor pad here, and once you highlight it, you're going to click this go to button. That's going to give you a bearing to go to. You zoom out, you can see my little boat icon. Sometimes older models, the map will spin, which I don't like. This one has never spun, like it doesn't spin on me. My boat actually spins. It's constantly stuck in true north, so I do like that. I don't know if you have a map that shifts on you. I honestly don't know how to fix that. You're gonna have to look it up on a different video, or I can do some research on it, I guess. And you can hit the plus and minus sign to zoom in and zoom out. So plus will zoom in, minus will zoom out. And we're gonna slow down. This is a lot closer to the edge than I thought. I have my screens already set. So it's a split screen and GPS. And is there fish? There's something down there. There's probably leaves or something like that. Alright, so it looks like there is something right on this break. I don't know, smaller bait fish or something. I might throw a rod down, but it's kind of hard to get right on top of. See, I can't zoom in anymore. But see, if you actually go to the cursor, it says I'm 7 feet away. I'm 7 feet away from my GPS mark. Now I'm 9 feet. But that's kind of how you set your waypoint. You can change the icon, and if you hit the go to button, it'll give you a bearing to go to your waypoint. Alright, so yeah, it's getting cold. It's temp probably dropped into the 30s right now. But that's just kind of a quick crash course. If you just got it out of the box, those tips should help you set it up. I got a bunch of videos of in-depth information going into in-depth of the 2D, the side imaging, the down imaging, and the GPS. I'm going to do another GPS video, hopefully tomorrow if it doesn't rain or sleet or snow, or whatever Mother Nature decides. But I appreciate you watching. I really do. Comment below if you have any specific questions and you want specific answers on anything like this that I haven't done, okay? If I see questions that I know I've done a video on, I'm just going to link the video. You can watch it. And if you have any questions of videos I haven't done, information I haven't provided, please post them in the comment section below. I use them for video ideas, okay? And if you want to contact me and it's just kind of a quick question, you can go to Facebook. You can message me on Facebook, Flopping Crappie on Facebook. You can message me on Instagram. You can get at me on Twitter as well. So any one of those three, I try my best to get back to you within the same day. Sometimes I get a little busy between my real job and editing this stuff. So appreciate you watching as always. Be sure to like and share this video. And if you're not a subscriber, click that red subscribe button. You're going to see more how-to videos like this. Click that bell so you get notified every time I post a video like this or just a fishing video. I know there's no fishing in this, so if you came for that, I apologize. But running out of daylight here. We'll see you next time. Yeah, oh, by the way, I don't know if you could tell. Water temp, 43. Told you the water temp's pretty cold. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend getting the water at 43 degrees. It's not fun. It's an ice bath. Is that a wood duck? There's a wood duck. No, that's not a wood duck. I don't know what that is. It's a bird that's very annoying. Anyway, all right. Video's long enough. We'll see ya.